Good. Are we all good? Okay. Good evening and welcome to the St. Helena Planning Commission for July 5th, 2016. I'd like to ask Mr. Palmer to lead us in the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Commissioners Monette,
Here.
Sweeney,
Here.
Koberstein,
Here.
Vice Chair Kistner, Chairperson Parker.
Present. Moving on to our public forum, this is an opportunity for the public to address the Commission on items of interest that are not listed on tonight's agenda. Because of restrictions imposed by the Brown Act, the Commission may not engage in discussion nor take action on matters not described on tonight's agenda. Would anyone like to speak at public forum? Seeing none, I'm going to move on to our consent items, which there are none. The minutes from our June 21st meeting will be presented at our July 19th meeting. Moving on to our public hearings, we have two this evening. The first is a design review for 1711 Spring Street. May we have a staff report, please?
Yes, thank you, Chairperson Parker. As noted in the staff report, the existing 16,250 square foot parcel is currently developed with a 1,862 square foot, 3-bedroom, 2.5 bathroom, 2-story single-family residence with a 515 square foot detached 2-car garage, and is located in the high-density residential district. The applicant is seeking design review approval to remodel and enlarge the existing home by 1,848 square feet in order to accommodate a new master suite and family room on the first floor, as well as providing a connection to the garage. The staircase would be relocated, requiring minor modifications to the second floor. Many architectural features of the home would be removed, including bay windows and a tall gabled roof turret, as the home is transformed from a Victorian style to a farmhouse style. The home at its highest point would be reduced from 32 feet to approximately 26 feet 8 inches. The remodeled home would be finished with a variety of materials, including vertical board and batten siding, existing bevel siding, stone veneer, composition shingle roofing, and standing seam metal roofing with wood-clad windows and doors. As far as the floor area ratio is concerned, the parcel has a FAR maximum of 0.248 for a maximum square footage of 4,030 square feet. The proposed project consists of 4,025 square feet, which is 5 feet below the maximum allowed by code. The project, as proposed, meets all the requirements of the high-density residential zone, including lot size, building size, setbacks, height, etc. The existing home was constructed in 1980 and is not listed on the city's historic resources master list. This is a unique property as it's not only zoned high-density residential, it's surrounded by parkland on 2 sides. Staff finds that the proposed configuration of the site, the overall design elements and proposed materials and finishes are in character with the neighborhood and the community in general, and recommends that the Planning Commission accept the required findings and grant design review approval for the proposed remodel and expansion for the residents at 1711 Spring Street. And I would be happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Are there any questions of staff? All right. With that, I'd like to open up the public hearing and invite the applicant to come forward if they are present. Yes, please.
Good evening.
This is a time for if you have a short presentation. All right.
It stands as Aaron said, so I'm fine with everything.
All right. Are there any questions of the applicant? Oh, if you could stay forward just so we can
I
hear.
have a question. I'm just wondering, usually, privacy is an issue, but it wouldn't be an issue for you because you're by the park, but I'm just wondering, are there trees between where you're going to be? I went over there, but I didn't go around the whole thing. And are there going to be trees between the new construction and the park? Because I'm thinking of the privacy of the people in the park as opposed to the privacy, your privacy.
And if you could speak into the microphone so people at home, I'm sorry.
There's existing trees, that's redwood trees that cover probably 3/4 of the property, and there's some Japanese maples that are on the park, and they're thin because we took out a redwood tree, and so would be happy to put a couple redwood trees back on the park side. Not it's too close to the new foundation, which is why we took out the redwood tree.
Okay, or some other high-growing tree.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, thanks.
Any other questions of the applicant? Perfect, thank you so much. Would anyone else like to speak on this agenda item? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing and invite commission discussion.
Go ahead.
I think it's a beautiful design, and I think it fits well into the property. I would support it.
I like it also, and I would like to thank you very much for the storyboard here. I like it a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's because of where it is. I think it's a fine design, and I'm happy that you can have your heart's desire. And but I do think it's really a good idea if you cover, so that people in the park, and you don't have to see them, they don't have to see you. So, yeah, thanks.
Commissioner Cooperstein?
Yeah, I have no issues with it. It's a large lot to begin with, and with the park on two sides, I think that makes a difference in terms of the size of the residence that's actually being put on the property, in my mind, anyway.
And I agree with my fellow commissioners. So if we could have a motion.
I move the project is exempt from the requirements of SEQA pursuant to Section 15301, which exempts minor alterations and additions to existing private structures, in Section 15303, which exempts the construction or conversion of small structures, including single-family residence, garages, and pools, etc. I suggest. I lost my place here.
Move that we accept.
I move that we accept the design review, and that's it.
Is there a second?
And accept the project.
Would you, with the added thing that they'll plant some trees where I was talking about?
I don't think we can require that in this motion.
I don't either.
Oh, we can't?
That's my motion.
Second.
Roll call, please.
We'll do it.
And that was Commissioner Cooperstein and then Monette.
Vice Chair Kistner,
Yes.
Commissioner Monette,
Yes.
Commissioner Koberstein,
Yes.
Commissioner Sweeney,
Yes.
Chairperson Parker.
Yes. Thank you very much. Moving on to our next agenda item, it is another design review for 1645 Vineyard Avenue. May we have a staff report, please?
Yes, thank you, Chairperson Parker. The existing 7,486 square foot lot is currently undeveloped and is in the medium-density residential district. The applicant is proposing to construct a new 2,513 square foot, two-story, single-family residence with a 200 square foot, one-car detached garage. The new three-bedroom, 3.5 bathroom home would stand at approximately 24 feet 8 inches, while the garage would have a maximum height of approximately 14 feet 3 inches. The exterior of the home would be finished with a blend of horizontal lap siding and vertical board and batten siding, while the roof would be a mix of composition shingles and standing seam metal. The garage would be vertical board and batten siding and a standing seam metal roof. As far as floor area ratio is concerned, the parcel has a maximum FAR of 0.336 for a maximum square footage of 2,515 square feet. As stated earlier, the proposed project consists of 2,513, which is 2 square feet below the maximum allowed by code. At staff's request, the applicant has provided an exhibit demonstrating the number of stories and the floor area ratio for each home in close proximity of the subject property. This exhibit shows a mix of 1- and 2-story homes in the area with bars ranging from approximately 0.16 to 0.83. It should be noted that the existing lot is considered legal non-conforming. It is only 50 feet wide, while the current standard is 70 feet. However, even with this limitation, the project as designed still meets all required width and setback standards. The project meets all other requirements of the medium-density residential district. The city of St. Helena does have a residential growth management system that limits the number of residential building permits that can be issued each year to no more than 9. So far in 2016, 2 new market rate homes have been approved. However, no building permits have been issued at this time. A condition of approval has been added requiring that this project comply with all housing allocation requirements at the time building permits are issued. The project is required to provide off-site retrofits in order to offset projected future water use. The applicant has provided a water neutrality analysis that demonstrates no net increase in water consumption from the project after the off-site retrofits are made. Project meets all required on-site parking. We did receive one comment after packet publication that has been provided to you via email and a hard copy on the dais, asking that construction workers be required to only park on the same side of the street as 1645 Vineyard. Staff has questions about the legality of such a requirement as it is a public street, and has additional concerns about the enforceability, as we don't know who owns what car that's going to be parked on the street. The proposed project meets the required development standards as described in the municipal code, and staff believes that the proposed project is consistent with the design review criteria discussed in the staff report. For these reasons, staff recommends that the Planning Commission accept the required findings and approve design review for the proposed 2-story single-family residence with detached one-car garage at the vacant property located at 1645 Vineyard Avenue. And I would be happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Are there any questions of staff? I would like to add that I received a late email from Ms. Connie Wilson about the redwood tree protection that's next to the garage on the fence line to make sure that that's protected, as it's quite old. So that was just a late email that I received this evening. Just wanted to add that to the record. And with that, if there are no questions, I will, excuse me?
I just want to understand what you're saying. You're talking about the redwood that's on the north side, and it's in the proposed driveway?
It's in the, oh, I don't actually have the email, I just wrote the note down. Let me get the email up. And actually, she's here, so I will just maybe have her speak to it once, during the public comment.
Okay.
And with that, I will open up the public hearing and invite the applicant to come forward.
Good evening, Ken Dyer. I have nothing further to add from what Aaron did. I think he did a great job demonstrating what we're proposing to build.
Are there any questions of the applicant?
I have a question about the parking. Is it something you would voluntarily do to try to get the construction people to stay on one side of the street? It is a rather narrow street, but I think more concerning is there's not full sidewalks and people actually be walking in the street. I don't know how long your construction period runs, but is that something you'd be willing to?
I'd be more than happy to assist with that. Guaranteeing it to 100%, I think, is next to impossible. But we do a lot of infill development, and the majority of everything we've ever built has neighbors on both sides of the street. We're very respectful of neighbors. All of my crews are very aware of our respect level of what we need to achieve. We want to leave with a good taste in everyone's mouth. So yeah, I'd absolutely make every effort for that.
Thank you.
Any other questions of the applicant? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak on this agenda item? If you could come back up to the, or you could just answer me and I'll answer through 9 months? 9 months is the length of the project. And if you're going to ask questions, though, I'm sorry, ma'am. Ma'am, you need to come up to the podium so the people at home can hear you.
I just was curious as to how long the project would be and when you plan on starting. Can you speak into?
Projected 9 months. Starting will be dependent on when the building department can issue a permit. We're planning on submitting our final packet next week. And I think I've been quoted 20, am I right, Aaron? 24 to 28 working day turnaround on the first cycle. And I know there'll be comments, and I think it's a similar cycle on the second. So I think realistically, it's probably the first week of September, trying to be optimistic.
Okay.
All goes well.
My mother lives on the south side of what
And
you're
if you could
proposing
speak
to
into the
build.
microphone, I'm sorry.
My mother lives on the south side of this project, and it's a 2-story house. This lot has been vacant for years. And just was curious, because it's kind of hard to see the second story, like how many windows are going to be on that side. I don't really, I mean, the first picture that, can you see? It's hard, what side is that, on the one that shows the elevation on the bottom? That's north. Okay, do you have a south side?
I don't think we have an elevation.
Is there a way that you could get that to us? Since we can't see it from these plans? And then my understanding is that the driveway is going to be on the north side of the house? And the garage will be towards, on the north side, at the end of the driveway, next to the other garage that's there? Okay. Okay. And then what's the setback from?
Size?
Yeah, the sides.
10 feet on the house.
Okay.
Garage, I believe, is
And actually, if Aaron, if you could answer those questions so that people, because he's answering questions that people can't hear at home.
Sorry, I was looking.
Oh, sorry, was what the setbacks
The
were.
setback was from, say, the south side of the property line, where the house would actually be constructed in.
The side setbacks and the
Side-
median density are 10 feet on each side.
10 feet?
Yeah, for anything less than 25 feet in height.
Okay.
Except the
And,
garages.
okay, does this show the, no, that still shows the north side, correct?
Those are all those are the elevations.
This is the south view? Okay. And this is just a, oh, is this a walkway that goes right through here, in between?
From the front of the house to the rear of the house.
Yeah.
And
so-
we kept those windows up high, out of respect to neighbors, so that someone's not peering down.
These windows? Because to me, that's peering down into,
They're up top too. They're probably starting about the 6-foot level and up.
okay. It's just that we, that's all our activity is right on that side, and just was curious as to
Very understanding of that.
how many windows are basically second story up, so, I mean, bottom level is okay. Okay. This gives a better idea. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Connie Wilson, Scott Street. And my family owns 2 parcels directly across the street from this project, with 4 families renting those houses there. And I was the one that raised the traffic and parking situation, having just lived through 4 years of construction hell on Scott Street, where I live. And some of you may have gone up there to see how that street would narrow into just one lane only. Again, there's maybe a 50-foot sidewalk. Otherwise, there's no sidewalks. I know there's a lot of elderly and children who walk to school on that street, so I can't imagine where they're going to go other than in the middle of the street if both sides are taken up by construction vehicles. I also raised the question about that redwood tree in the back. That's a century-old heritage tree. I'd like to know whether they have any plans to protect that, because I'd hate to see that damaged or removed. And then one other thing I noticed today while looking at the plan was where they have the pool equipment. And again, this is another firsthand experience. We just had a new house put in on Scott Street where the pool equipment was put in the back corner, which is next to our property. And the wall was the same wall, the sound wall, same wall as they have planned. It's an L-shaped. However, all the sound will be then into Petit Abruzzini's yard. And our neighborhood has really changed, or at least our property has changed, having to listen to the pool equipment, and that goes for 24 hours per day, every single day. And so in the morning when I wake up, I can listen to the pool equipment, and in the evening when we're out there having dinner, we can also listen to the pool equipment noise. So that may be something that you might want to think about. Why should the neighbors have to listen to your pool equipment noise? Because I certainly don't enjoy that on Scott Street. Thanks very much for your consideration.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak on this agenda item? The applicant does have a chance to come back up to answer Ms. Wilson's questions if you should so choose to, about the tree. And the pool. Thank you.
I think regarding the pool equipment, I think there's a couple ways of mitigating the noise. One is higher efficiency pumps are much quieter than standard pumps that are used, which is something that we only use. Just like a very high efficiency heat and air system, the condensing units, outside condensers are much quieter than a typical unit. So I think through the use of higher tech equipment, it's a small pool. It doesn't require a large pump. It's probably a 1.5 horsepower pump, which is quieter by nature because of the size of the pump as well as the sound wall around it. We had fencing. I have no problem doing a block of some sort, which is going to certainly help with noise. As far as pool equipment running every day for 24 hours a day, I don't understand whose pool that is, but 3 to 4 hours a day is more than enough to filter almost any pool out there. So if pool equipment's running, it's running because someone has a timer that's miscued, or someone doesn't realize they're wasting a lot of power.
And the tree?
The tree, we're going to do everything we can to protect it by all means. We're respectful of trees. So there's several trees on the property that are going to come off just because of where they're located. However, we're going to do everything in our best interest. We've already dealt with the arborist who gave the original bid on pruning the trees. So we're going to be working, and they're a local company. We'll be working with them as well, how to mitigate that.
Perfect. Any other questions of the applicant? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And with that, I'm going to close the public hearing and invite commission discussion.
Well, okay, so I'll go first. I walked the street and I counted 15 or 16 houses. It's hard to do because there's a lot of stuff in front of the houses. I walked the street a couple of times. And out of 15 or 16, 3 are two-story. So it's by far the majority of houses are one-story there. And the idea of coming within 2 square feet of the FAR doesn't seem to me to fit in with that area. To me, this is way too big. It should be a single-story house, and it should be around 1,700 or 1,800 square feet for the small lot that is there, and to be in keeping with most of the other houses on the block. And you can have a good pump, but it could be replaced by the people who own the house by a bad pump. I don't know. I think noise pollution is an extremely important thing to consider as public policy, because it's not usually considered that important, but I've read lots and lots of research studies that have been replicated that there is a lot of psychological and mental stress from unwanted noise, especially low frequency. I have brought that to the city council at times, but I am really concerned with noise, and I'm also concerned about the tree because I'm not sure. I think redwood roots don't go deep; they go laterally, and with such a big, massive bunch of building, I mean, it's probably going to interfere with the roots. But those are some of my concerns. I just think it's time to say no to these big houses on smaller lots that go right to the edge of what's legal when it's not in keeping with the neighborhood. So findings 1, 2, 3, 6, and 12 I could not make on this project. So I would like to see it 1 story, much smaller, and perhaps without a pool. I think it's going to interfere with that redwood tree. But I'm not an arborist, but from what I've heard in these discussions, I think it's something to consider.
The redwood roots will grow into the pool, Bobby.
Anyone else?
I guarantee it.
I just did the calculation, and 40% of the houses on that street, if you include the applicant, are 2-story, and 60% are 1-story. So it's according to what's the jurisdiction and comparison neighborhood that we're looking at, it's 18 houses, and of those, 7 of them are 2-story. Not just the little street.
Because I walked the street twice.
You're just looking at the frontage, but we're talking about the ones behind it as well.
Oh, I'm just talking about that block on each side of the block, which is, well, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't look at it that way, so obviously those are different
Yeah.
stats.
Commissioner Kistner, any comments?
Yeah, and I don't know what the legality of this is. I just I think I have a question of staff. I'm not really sure that I like that garage within 4 feet of the property line. The setback is 10 feet and 20 feet except for the garage, and it's within 4 feet, I believe, on both sides to the property lines.
Code allows it to be up to 3 feet.
I beg your pardon?
3 feet. Code allows up to detached accessory structures can be up to 3 feet. It
Okay,
is.
I couldn't find anything on that, so that was a question I had. I'm also concerned with what Bobby says about the redwood trees, because we're building something at Vineyard Valley, and we were advised not to build it near the redwood trees because the roots will grow into the pool. Now, that's their problem if it does, but That's what the arborist told us. So I do have a concern with that. I also have a concern of the size.
Commissioner Koberstein?
Well, you know, I've spoken out about the size of houses before. This neighborhood, to me, is a little bit mixed in terms of the houses that are there. I wish we'd see a plan like this that was going to be a family house that somebody in St. Helena was going to live in. We seem to keep building these big houses as getaways or whatever, which troubles me, but I don't know that there's anything, you know, that we can do about it. I am concerned about the trees. I'm wondering if we can do anything about the pool pump. I mean, I know they're more efficient. The more efficient models are definitely quieter, and they don't run all day long. The pool is indicated to be built by others, so I'm not sure about that.
It would be appropriate if the commission desired to require full noise attenuation surrounding the pump or pool equipment, if that was a condition the commission requested. However, you are correct that pools are allowed by right. So in the future, if a pool is not shown on an applicant's proposal and they came in afterwards to follow up to construct one, then that would be something that was not reviewed by the commission. However, given that it's a part of the overall proposal, it is appropriate to condition the pool equipment if that was the desire of the commission.
Yeah, I mean, we just changed our pool pump, and I found it noticeably quieter, and it doesn't run nearly as much, and saves electricity, and you also get a rebate. At least you did from PG&E. So, you know, I would definitely be in favor of that because I know from my own experience, the noise of our prior pump was annoying.
And would that condition carry on if the construction of the pool doesn't happen with this building permit?
Yeah, because it would be a condition of the overall design. They actually will be required to pull a separate building permit for the pool and the garage because they're separate structures.
So we'd be seeing it again? No.
Oh, no, it'd be conditioned, and staff would ensure that the conditions are met with the building permit drawings.
I guess my question for my fellow commissioners is what we want to do about the tree. I mean, do we want just to say, you know, let's try to protect the tree? Is there anything we can put in the conditions to make it a little bit stronger than just our suggestion?
So there's kind of two issues here. Staff has not confirmed that it's a listed heritage tree, which the city does have a list of heritage trees which are on private property, which have additional protections separate from just a typical
The regular tree ordinance, okay.
However, either way, I feel it could be it would be appropriate for the commission to condition the project to get arborist-specific recommendations regarding construction impacts to the tree, and that the building construction and design implement those recommendations.
I would feel very comfortable to have that. I don't know if I'm good having a consensus on that. Go ahead.
I have no issue with the design. I know that there is a mixed neighborhood, and I know that some of this is around fashion and what is contemporary today. So this is the home people are buying and living. So, and I think it's beautifully designed, but I am concerned about the tree, and I would agree to support putting in conditions that protect noise and don't force the noise at the neighbors, and that we would have conditions that require an arborist report and that building be met.
Designed according
Yeah,
to those
right.
recommendations.
One other thing I'm not clear about is the deck that's off the master bedroom in the back. I understand what you're saying about the windows and the window height that you put in the master bedroom and in that galley hallway that most people walking by, it's probably above their eye level to actually look into the yard next door. But I'm wondering about this so-called retreat deck that's off the back where people might go sit and get a bird's eye view of everything, or is there some screening for the neighbors?
For on the side or for facing the rear of the yard?
Side and the rear.
Okay.
It's kind of looking down on the pool, though. I mean, it's looking at their own backyard. I mean,
Yeah, I can't quite tell.
isn't it? 'Cause, I mean, that's right here, and I mean, they would be going all the way past, plus any landscape, plus the fence before they'd be to a neighbor. This is the facing rear, so that deck, I believe.
What's on the side of the?
That's downstairs. That's,
Yeah. Is it enclosed, the upper?
So the side, okay.
it's looking straight on to this
right.
pool here,
Okay.
as I understood it. Is that right? It looks like it's looking straight on at the pool, right?
Commissioner Koberstein, does that answer your question? Okay,
And then
perfect.
presumably the tree saved, it's looking past, it's shielded by the tree as well.
All right, any other comments?
Nobody else is concerned about the second story and the size? besides-
I mean, I think that I think Commissioner Koberstein said it best, that we're all concerned about the size and massing, but there's not a lot that we can do the way that the code is written right now.
Well, it's a small lot, and it's a non-conforming lot, right?
No, I don't believe so. I believe the other project was the non-conforming
Right.
lot.
Well, it's a legal non-conforming width, but that,
Right.
it still meets all the development
And
standards.
I understand,
the
but
homes in those the day,
And
when
it
this
is
neighborhood
in
was
a mixed
built.
neighborhood.
Yeah, when this neighborhood was built, Fashion was ranch homes, and now Fashion is two-story farmhouse. I mean, part of what we're seeing is an evolution of how people construct their residences. So
I
I think,
understand, but most people in that neighborhood have more, their setbacks are bigger. It's just the character of the neighborhood. If we're into, the general plan is about preserving neighborhoods. If we're into preserving, the character of the neighborhood, most of them have more space around them. I mean, we could build out to the limit.
No, I was just gonna say, a majority of the homes in that subdivision are the same width. They're all 50, a majority of them are 50 feet
But I
in
mean,
width.
they're not built out to the edge. I mean, like, the garage is 3 feet from the property line. I mean,
I bet the other garages, that's where garages are. They sit back.
That's why it's the 3-foot setback.
well, I was just eyeballing it. I just didn't. It just seems too massive, and there's just one house after another to the maximum setbacks.
And Bobby, I definitely feel your concern. I share the same concerns, but I think we have to be pragmatic, and it's the way that the zoning ordinance is written, and we can't just be arbitrary in how we pick and choose. Okay, this project's okay and this one's not.
Well,
And this project, we can't also say that, it's just one house after another. This is a specific application based on
Yeah.
the lot that we're looking at.
One of the findings has to do with future construction too. I guess. I mean, it isn't. If we didn't have discretionary discussion, we wouldn't be here. So,
Right.
I don't think it's arbitrary, and I don't think it's capricious to, we have. I remember on the same street. On that really tiny lot, we made some demands about the size because it was way too massive for the lot. But anyway, that's where I'm coming from. I'm hearing what you're saying too. So
Yeah, it is troublesome, but it's a trend that we really don't have the power to control at this point.
okay, I could.
So if we could have a motion with our conditions on the noise and the tree arborist report.
Okay. I move that we determine the project is exempt from CEQA, requirements of CEQA pursuant to section 15303, which exempts the construction or conversion of small structures, including single-family residences, garages, pools, etc. And we move to accept the required findings and approved design review for the proposed 2-story single-family residence with a detached 1-car garage on the vacant property located at 1645 Vineyard with two following conditions. One, that an arborist report be required, and that all efforts are made to build and design within the requirements to protect the existing redwood tree. Also, that staff will determine if it is in fact a heritage tree, but at this point, regardless, we want to see an arborist report, and that there be design requirements around both the structure around the pool equipment, and that we would recommend a high-efficiency pool pump to mitigate sound and atmosphere ambience for the neighboring houses.
Is there a second?
Second.
Can I discuss something before we call for the motion? I just want to say one more thing. I did find that there were several findings that I didn't think were met. So I just want to say that we can say no to some of these things. I mean, we can do that. I don't think it's something that's out of our power to do. So.
All right,
And that's fair.
and that's fair. If we could have roll call, please.
Commissioner Sweeney,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kistner,
Yes.
Commissioner Monette,
No.
Commissioner Koberstein,
Yes.
Chairperson Parker.
Yes. Moving on, I'm going to ask my fellow commissioners if we could move up the administrative determination on Sportigo to our next item, because I see that there are people in the audience for that item, rather than have them sit through our oh-so-lovely report from Mr. Steve Palmer. I'm so sorry. Is that okay with everyone? Yes. Okay, just, all right. With that, I'm going to move on to the department reports. The administrative determination of Sportigo. If we could have a brief staff report.
Thank you, Chair Parker. There's not a lot to report here. Just staff will essentially present the information that's in the packet. It is worth noting that an appeal was filed on this determination, and that will be scheduled for the next Planning Commission meeting, the hearing of that appeal. However, the administrative determination that's in the packet today, which is intended to be presented, essentially was in response to a recommendation, or I'm sorry, a request from Sportigo, inquiring about occupying 1380 Main Street, which is the Minigan building on the corner of Adams and Main Street. In response, staff asked them to classify their store to determine the process for occupying that space. The email response is in the packet. Sportigo indicated they were a clothing store, specifically stating they don't really do anything in the way of sporting goods. As mentioned, that email is in the package. In response, staff went to the store, looked at their logo, just some additional information, and made the formal determination that they were in fact a clothing store, which requires a use permit in the downtown district. After hearing that the clothing store required a use permit, Sportigo began looking around at potential other classifications that would fit their use, and then asked staff to revisit that determination. However, from staff's perspective, it would not be good policy to allow applicants to pick and choose as to what their land uses are capriciously, especially in response to what the process is for approval. Unfortunately, there's no code definition for a clothing store or a sporting goods store in the zoning code, so we're relying on our own input and knowledge in addition to the information provided by the applicants. And then also in keeping with the direction from the Planning Commission that staff and our department should be strict in our interpretation of the code. So all those things went into the determination that Sportigo was in fact a clothing store rather than a sporting goods store. However, staff wanted to try to provide the opportunity for Sportigo to present that information to the Planning Commission. And so staff made the formal determination that they were in fact a clothing store, which then allowed them to appeal that decision to the Planning Commission for their review. And as I mentioned, it is scheduled or will be scheduled for the next Planning Commission agenda. And I see the applicants are here in the audience, and they may wish to speak. It's not a public hearing. However, it's up to the discretion of the Planning Commission if you'd like to hear their comments.
Okay. Are there any questions of staff?
I'm not clear. They're representing themselves as a sporting goods store, a clothing store, or both?
So the zoning code requires clothing stores to get use permits. Sportigo initially said that they were in fact a clothing store, but then asked that, or then on second thought, indicated that they were a sporting goods store.
Because I mean, have you seen the inventory? So
I think he's seen it. He prepared the packet.
yeah. So I mean that it looks like a sporting goods store. So am I going to be
again, the inventory list was provided. Staff has had numerous discussions with the applicants. Multiple members of the public, in fact, numerous letters in support of their use as a sporting goods store have been provided to staff. That list of apparel and items was provided by the applicants after the determination was made informally, in keeping with the description staff provided of them trying to find an alternative classification.
What's the current permitted use? Or, yeah.
It's a clothing store right now.
Is the permit right now says clothing store?
Nobody knows.
Nobody
yes,
knows.
nobody knows because they've been there that long.
They've been there a long
why don't we
time.
just make it up?
They've been there a long time, and so the existing use permit, they don't have a use permit themselves. They're operating as a continuing use on the previous use permit.
Which was?
In truth, I don't know.
No,
So they were
no.
they were asking to move into the Minigan building, which is empty and has never had any use there.
Yeah. Well, since that matches, there's never been any use where they are. So, well, anyway, okay. That's very unclear, but it's clearly unclear.
Commissioner Koberstein.
Well, I'm just wondering what happens on July 19th. Is this noticed as a public hearing?
It's actually not a public hearing because the code doesn't require it to be a public hearing, but it would be an appeal, a review of their appeal.
And what will we have that we don't have this evening?
Numerous letters representing the applicants, and they actually, I think, or supporting the applicants, and I believe there's some additional information that they provided to me in making their case.
Okay, but we cannot act on it tonight, correct?
We're not
Because it
supposed to
hasn't been
talk about
agendized
Yeah,
that way?
that's exactly right. And even if the commission chose to appeal the determination on behalf of the applicants or in lieu of the applicants, it would still be agendized at the next meeting.
So we can't talk, we listen tonight, no talking.
You're free to talk about it.
Oh.
Just there's it wasn't agendized as a discussion item, and there's no action being requested of the commission tonight.
Okay.
This is an informational presentation to you, so you understand what staff's been doing in keeping with the other administrative determinations that have been presented.
Are there fees associated to the applicant for filing an appeal versus an administrative?
The appeal is $1,000, which they paid and they filed, I believe, $1,200. And then obviously the use permit is $5,800 with the public hearing. There was no fee for the administrative determination.
But the appeal will supersede the need for, if the appeal is granted, it supersedes the need for a use permit
That's correct.
application.
Staff will ask the question of if a clothing store wants to move into the site that will be vacated by them, will that be a continuing use, or will a sporting
empty
goods store
space.
But
have
there's
to-
no use permit you
There's
can
no
find
use
today,
permit.
so.
I actually have not researched their use permit for the previous use.
Okay. Any other questions?
No,
I feel
I
like
have
I-
comment and thoughts, but.
Okay.
If the commission had initiated appeal, would there be a fee?
There's no fee for the commission to appeal a staff determination.
It wouldn't be a fee for them. Obviously, we wouldn't have to pay a fee.
No, the city would just cover the cost.
Ah.
I mean, obviously, there is time associated with it, and the appeals are somewhat subsidized in that the staff time to get an action before the commission is much more expensive than $1,200. However, they're subsidized intentionally to try to facilitate reasonable appeal process and cost. However, should the commission choose to direct staff to cover that cost, then that is the case. In this situation, somewhat of a moot decision given that they've already filed the appeal.
Oh, they couldn't be reimbursed?
They could be reimbursed a partial refund. I mean, we've already spent some of their fees to cover the time to take in the appeal, begin the review process, et cetera. All of our fees they all just cover the time that it takes to process applications. There are no, it's not to, essentially you're not buying a permit, as I mentioned to folks, and the city doesn't make any revenue off of it. It just covers the cost.
Any other questions of staff?
I don't have any questions. I have an opinion.
Why don't we have, I would like to open up public comment and have the people here who are here to speak, and then we can have all of our comments. So if you'd like to, I'm going to open up the public comment. And if you could come up to the podium so the people at home can hear you in the microphone.
Thank you. We weren't prepared for this, so we'll just kind of wing it here. But I guess to address things, first of all, I would like to say regarding our existing use permit, and this is just supposition, but we moved to the space we're in 1993 where you clearly needed to have a use permit. And our owner of the building, Gene Phillips, remembers being at a planning commission meeting, but she has very good records, and there is no use permit that she has, but it's been so many years she doesn't recall exactly. And we researched city, and they don't have a use permit for it, so we kind of presume that there's a good possibility. We aren't positive that we were originally designated as sporting goods, but that's supposition. You know, we can't say for sure. And I guess,
And
secondly,
there wasn't a clothing store there before us.
no, it was a winery storage, so it wasn't like we moved in at, a specific use. That's exactly. So it was never a clothing store in there, never retail. And, of course, respect of Aaron and Noah, the designation that we gave him is just a little out of context, and I don't mean this as a complaint in any way, but just to clarify how things went down. And we actually had a meeting with Aaron because Noah was very busy, and his correspondence to us was starting out, we need a use permit. Our owner told us we need a use permit. Our leasing agent told us we need a use permit. We were very innocent in this process. We had no idea what we were doing, and we didn't do our research the way we should have. Pardon me. And Aaron asked us specifically, and it's all in that same email, what we thought of ourselves at. Do we think of ourselves as a clothing store or an equipment store or sporting goods or all of the above? And if we would have had any inkling of the direction, or we hadn't read the ordinances or anything, and so we just kind of laid out what it is, because we've always been perceived by our customers, and this is the reason for the logo, as sporting goods. And we get day after day customers, other merchants on Main Street that go, well, I'm sorry, I don't shop there, but I'm not athletic, I don't do anything sporting. So we try and push forward that we have great clothing, but it's all active outdoor clothing. It's clothing for running and hiking, and we feel that that's sporting goods. Noah feels that that's just clothing, and that's just differences of opinion. So I guess that's all I have to say.
Are there any questions? I was going to say of the applicant, but it's not yet.
I just have one comment. When this does come to us, it's considered a de novo review where we find facts ourselves and ask the questions that we want to ask and give whatever weight we want to give to, whatever everybody else has uncovered. I personally find it interesting that there is no use permit. I think there's an implication.
That it might be a business license.
And I'm not confirming that there is no use permit. I'm just saying we have not fully vetted the research. That'll be part of what we bring to the commission.
Right. It's just that the owners don't seem to think there was one either. It's an interesting fact, I think. And if they did leave, I take it, since if we could not unearth a use permit there, whoever came into that space would either be a permitted use and go in or come and get their own use permit, correct?
If they were determined to be a clothing store obviously could move in as a continuing use. If they're determined to not be a clothing store, then a new clothing store could be required to get a use permit. However, staff, if the decision is of the Planning Commission to find that they're actually a sporting goods store, staff would probably ask that the commission also find that a sporting goods store is a more intense use than a clothing store, which would then allow a clothing store or a sporting goods store to occupy that site as a continuing use. And this will be more clearly elaborated in the staff report that comes. But what the concern that staff has is if the next business wanting to move in there is a clothing store, which is clearly the exact same operational impacts associated with Sportago, even if they are a sporting goods store, it would be somewhat of an irony to require them to have a use permit from staff's perspective. Given that continuing uses can be the same or less intense use as determined by staff.
But it sounds like it could be a double thing. It could be sporting goods and clothing, and so that whoever came in there, either one of those would.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so that would solve
That's
that
what
concern.
staff will be bringing forward with the appeal.
Yes.
May I say one more thing?
Of course.
When we met with Noah, once we started researching REI and Big Five and all these other stores and going, oh my gosh, they look like our store. And we've taken pictures of them as such. And we sent in, once we re-looked at things, a percentage of what we felt was classic sporting goods, things that we saw in other sporting goods stores. Noah didn't agree with us, but we then asked him, well, what percentage would you be comfortable with? What do you need from us? And I'm pretty sure you'll confirm your response was it didn't matter. And, he had his reasons for that staff shouldn't have to, check on your store and make sure. But, we were like, what can we do? We'll do anything. What do you guys need from us? Because we do sell kayaks and tents and sleeping bags, and we special order them. But honestly, just walking in the store, you don't know who we are. You don't know, communicating with our customers, what we do. And people come to us for their kids' Boy Scout trips, their trips to Yosemite, and it's just difference whether we think it's who signifies that as sporting goods and who doesn't. So
I will confirm that 100%, and it's much less to do with my opinion as to, or an individual opinion as to whether yoga pants are apparel or sporting goods, and much more to do with consistent application of the code and being firm in that individual applicants, while I completely agree that you all are probably relatively inexperienced with dealing with land use policies and those types of things, staff's very cognizant of future applicants trying to change their designation to minimize the review and the cost of the review process. And so, not saying that these applicants are in any way doing that, but again, if someone, one of the things staff asks individual applicants to do is to describe their use in writing so we can sit down and really be clear as to what we're reviewing. And if someone said, I'm a winery, X, Y, and Z, oh wait, I have to go through a use permit process for the winery. Oh no, I'm just a grape processing facility. So that's the more of the bigger issue. Staff was looking at it more of a bigger issue, and also why we agreed to facilitate as much as possible bringing the item before the Planning Commission to allow the Planning Commission to weigh in on a case-by-case basis, which is the role of the Commission.
I have one other question. When you prepare your information for the next meeting, from what date do the permitted uses in this district date back to? Is it possible to figure that out?
I would say the general plan was adopted in 1993.
So these permitted uses that we see now were likely what was in effect
A
when
reaction
they
to the
first
93 general plan.
Probably right around the same time they occupied. Whether it was right before, right after, I can't tell you.
It's exactly what it was in that general plan, because that's the general plan we're working on. We're working under.
The general plan doesn't dictate uses, though. The zoning, in theory,
Yeah, the zoning
today-
could stay the same. It could be the zoning from 1975.
No, I know,
exactly,
I
but
was
it could have also been updated in response to the general plan, which was just
Which is
adopted
what
in
we're going to
93
do.
to require use permits for X, Y, and Z stores. But it's all speculation. I do have copies of the previous zoning codes, and I can research that.
I'd just be curious to know if this is relatively contemporaneous, these regulations that we're looking at today, with the time that they initially opened, if you can find that information.
And wasn't there recently, it was kind of controversial, but it never came before us, there was a wine tasting room or something like that that started selling clothing in it too. It was someone else came in and sold some clothing there. So it's not unprecedented. I mean, I'm not saying that's what's going on here, but the example that you gave is interesting because I think that just happened, didn't it? You said somebody selling wine can't suddenly be selling clothes, but I thought that just happened. So,
That was I wasn't meaning to convey that, because a wine bar or tasting room could be approved to also sell retail goods.
right.
Use permits are intended to look at the impacts of a use. So frankly, from staff's standpoint, having a use permit required from a clothing store is completely inappropriate, because most clothing stores are about as ideal of a retail use as you can imagine. Their deliveries are small. They don't take up a lot of time. They're typical 9 to 5 operations. The impacts of a clothing store are essentially non-existent compared to other retail. It's probably one of the most vanilla retail uses you could have. However, our code requires a use permit for them. And
Yeah.
exactly. I would say, frankly, from staff's perspective, the uses are probably flip-flopped in that a sporting goods store has deliveries like kayaks, has large scale, I'm going to park my truck in front while I load up this larger equipment. But I'm using the code that we're with, and until the general plan's adopted, staff can initiate the zoning code update, and 100% we plan to propose that clothing stores be permitted uses in all retail designated zoning districts. Until we get there, and the Planning Commission has a chance to weigh in on it, we're stuck with the code we have.
I have one other question for the owners. At the time you opened for business, was there another business like yours operating in town at the time?
No.
Okay.
Nothing even close. And there still isn't, as we said in our original appeal, we buy our goods at what's called the outdoor retailers. It's in Salt Lake City, and it's twice a year, and it's rock climbers, kayakers, it's all about travel, and that's where we do basically 100% of our buying, 99.5% of our buying. We don't go to clothing shows or rag shows or New York. I mean, once in a while, we'll look for a few accessories, but it's very rare. But we buy and are affiliated with the Outdoor Retailers Association, so that's our niche, and that's who we identify with, and that's who we want to remain true to.
Go ahead.
I guess I should save this for the next meeting when we are actually in an adjudicatory fashion, but I would disclose that at one time I did get an email from the owners questioning what was going on, and at that point I told them I didn't think it was appropriate for me to weigh in any fashion because it was likely to come to us either as an appeal or a use permit. That was maybe a couple months ago, I think.
Yeah, I had the same response, same email of, sorry, I can't really weigh in at this point.
I actually did go in and speak and listen to you, and I don't think I don't think anything was said that I didn't say anything. I don't think anyone said that I wouldn't say publicly, or that he wouldn't say publicly. So,
Commissioner Sweeney, I see you.
Yeah, no, I've met with the applicants. I'm just, Molly, I don't know if this is the appropriate time or not, but what I'm hearing is that we've kind of created this rock and a hard place where we can't give good common sense advice as a planning director to an applicant, and I hope that we get that remedied very quickly with the general plan. I mean, I think this is a perfect example where we are spending tens of thousands of dollars, applicants, city, all of ours, if we put all these resources together on something that shouldn't even be a discussion point. It shouldn't have been, it should be done. They should be packing boxes and moving up the street. So I think that's a challenge, and I hope that we get to resolution on it by moving along the general plan and other things that need to
And I guess
minimize conversation and get things passed.
I guess I'm going to go the opposite way. I think that that the planning director made the right determination with the information that he had, and I have the quotes here. I'm not going to read them tonight. That if the applicant had brought in the stuff that they brought in the mid-March, that we wouldn't be here either. So I think that the applicant didn't know what they were doing. Maybe they should have sat down and had a meeting and determined that. But I think with the information he had at the time he had it, that the planning director made the right decision. I think maybe we also need to consider defining a clothing store and a sporting goods.
Well, I think that's what Commissioner Sweeney is saying, is that we wouldn't be in this spot. I understand what you're saying, but we wouldn't be in this spot if the code was written clearly and.
That's correct.
And I think there's a limit to what we expect. I mean, if we're talking out of two sides of our mouth, if we say we don't want to have a big corporate, lawyered up retailers in town, we want small mom and pop local owners, and yet we want them to be lawyers and figure out how to read our code.
I mean, I think it's tragic. I think it's tragic that a long-standing store that's been here for 23 years is here struggling to be like, can we just
met with you
move?
in February. This has been going on, months and months and months.
That's right.
33 years.
So I think we have to be cautious on this DS of getting too legalese and start remembering whose money we're spending, whose job we're making harder, and what we're really doing to our community when we try to think we're making it cleaner and easier. We're actually in many cases tying the hands of our director to just do common sense things and help people that we want to have do business in our town.
So maybe because my sense is too that when you come in to apply for something, you want it to go through. So you say what you think is appropriate, not what you think will get you what you want, but what's appropriate. And if you're informed that something else is needed to be appropriate, then you see if that fits. So I don't think anything was fabricated. I think when
I didn't mean to say that about it.
I mean, I didn't mean necessarily in response to that, but
I think that what Grace was saying is that if you had come and said, hi, we sell clothing for sporting activities, then Noah would have had a much easier time saying, okay, you fit in a sporting goods store.
But
you see that walking into the
but
store.
my
So I mean, we may be getting down to the appeal conversation, but
yeah.
But my
Like I
point
said,
is,
this will be brought back for full discussion of an appeal, and it just gets to the
And
bottom
this is just like an intro. Like, are we good? Are we covered for this at this point? I understand, Bobby, but
well, I didn't finish what I was.
I know,
gonna
but Bobby, we're gonna bring this back at the next meeting.
I understand that, but I want to say what I would
Okay.
like to say it, and then I would like to also clarify something. I don't think the onus is on the applicants to do anything except provide what they need to provide to get the permit. If they only come up with part of the information at first and are asked to do more, and they're able to come up honestly with more, then I think, I think that that is appropriate. If it would ease this process at all for us to appeal it, for us to ask for the appeal as the planning commission, if that would ease this process for the applicant at all, I would be in favor of doing that. I'm not sure how to do that tonight, but I would be in favor of doing that.
Could I make one quick comment that I think might
Of
help,
course.
and it addresses what Bobby's saying, is in reading back over our emails with Aaron, they were originally, I think it was on February 24th, and it was 2 sentences that we said, I'm pretty sure it was the 24th, and then a week later, our general contractor, not knowing that we had had these conversations with Aaron, basically asked him the same thing. I understand that, my clients need to get a use permit, and Aaron, what do we need to do that? And I know they'll be approved for the Central Business District, but what do they need in the way of a use permit? And Aaron graciously sent her the ordinances. And so if just in helping other people through this, if we would have received those ordinances, and again, I'm not saying there's an excuse, but we were in such innocence. If we'd gotten those ordinances and read them, we would have never said that. We would have read through them and go, oh my gosh, sporting goods. Well, that's what we think we're designated as, and it was just it was a fluke, but we made a mistake, people made mistakes.
Yeah.
Aaron also thought the use permit was going to be $3,700. He made a mistake, and so we're thinking, okay, 37. Well, it was $2,000 off, but it was a mistake.
Is it a problem for you to wait 2 more weeks for this determination?
For our stress level?
For relocating
The good of your
or
business
whatever
and moving in.
you
I
need?
think, and I appreciate your question, Mary. I think 2 weeks we're fine. We've already been, spending money and doing things. It all depends on, if we can apply for our building permit while we're waiting for this. But I think the 2 weeks, we want you to make, a decision you're comfortable with. We don't want to be pressured. 4 months would be a problem. We probably would lose our store. But, if we had to get, to be honest.
Yeah, I was just curious
But
whether
the
we
2
should try to
weeks,
have a special
I
meeting
appreciate
or
that.
something.
Yeah.
Agenda, no?
It is on the next agenda.
Okay.
Can we ask you to, can we appeal it? Can we go through whatever we need to go through so that we can appeal it from this point on and there won't be any more charges for the?
It could actually extend the process. I haven't reviewed the entire appeal process. However, basically we have one train already left the station. If you're now asking to stop that and to start a new process, without looking at the code, I can't tell you if it would impact the decision making at all.
Yeah.
Okay, I wasn't sure. I mean, you brought it up. I didn't. That's why I thought it was something we could do tonight.
I haven't. You can 100%. I'm just saying I haven't researched the implications of that decision.
What would you guys just to stay on the train?
I think as smoothly and easily as possible for everybody. So
Yeah, we're kind of at this point going with your professional. We don't know, and I'm not really clear what you're saying, Bobby, what that entails. I really am unclear on it.
I don't know
so-
what it, I mean, Noah had mentioned that if the planning commission would take on the process of appealing it, that it wouldn't cost you any more money, and I thought that might be something that we could do to support you, given, how the mix-up from all sides. But now I didn't know that, I don't know what it entails either, but Noah is now saying it might be, the unintended consequences might be worse than the goal, the immediate goal.
Just bring it back
Yeah.
in 2 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah. I appreciate the sentiment greatly, and I believe you do as well. But I think that let's just stay on the train and get this going for the 19th. Yes, okay, perfect, all right. Anyone else like to speak on this? Okay. All right, so back to our regular scheduled matters. Thank you very much. Next up is the determination of the fiscal year 2016-17 of the 2016 to 2021 capital improvement plan is in conformance with the general plan.
I have a question. Oh, is it time for a question or not yet?
A question on what topic?
Well, on this, it's
On what item?
on this item,
What is this item?
the thing you just
The capital
said.
improvement? Let's
Yeah.
wait for him to present, and then you can ask questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're on.
I'm on. Thanks, Anya. So yes, tonight we're asking that the Planning Commission take a look at the 5-year capital improvement program that is going to be scheduled for City Council adoption at the next council meeting in July 12th, and make the determination that it is in conformance with the adopted general plan. By way of introduction, this is a 5-year planning document. When it goes to council for approval, there's fiscal obligations associated with the first year, but then the other 4 years are out years, and they're planning tools, so there's no money appropriated for the future years. And CIP here in the St. Helena is really focused on maintaining and improving city infrastructure. We're not building any new facilities. There's one exception. We're not building any new facilities, any new roadways. We're really focused on trying to make sure our current infrastructure is maintained at the proper levels and operates correctly and complies with the regulatory requirements. It is $18.7 million over 5 years. I've divided it into 4 categories: civic, streets, wastewater, water. And I'll go back just before I blind you with numbers. It's substantially the same as it was last year. So I did this last year. My first one with the city was last year. It's substantially the same as last year. Primarily what I've done is just updated, drop projects off that are complete, provided updated cost estimates for projects that have started to move along, just to try and keep things tracking. And then I'll cover that a little more as we move forward. So here's just a quick snapshot of fiscal years and by category the expenditures. So the total is 18.7 million roughly. And what we're asking you to do tonight is to find that it's in conformance with the general plan. And as a little background, I just put up my own summary, my own words of the government code sections that we have to comply with here. And I got a typo. It's 65401 and 65402. And then 65401 in the government code requires that a coordinated program of proposed public works for the next fiscal year be submitted to the city planning agency for review and report as to conform with the general plan before it's adopted by the city council. That's what we're here doing. And then also as an ancillary one, 65402 requires this type of finding to be made before the city can actually acquire property. That's either by purchase or actually by dedication as well. So anyway, that's just why it's important and why we're here doing it. I can move on. Let's talk forward. The projects are really to maintain and rehabilitate existing infrastructures, no increase in capacity. There's one exception, and that is the restroom on Money Way, which was a new project that the city took over last year. It was something that had been talked about, and the Renaissance Committee and the Chamber were taking the lead on it for some time. And with last year's CIP, the city stepped in and decided to manage that project itself. And so that project will continue, and it is actually a new facility. So it's an exception to my little rule there. I did list the 2 guiding policies for this project, 3.4.2 and 3.4.7, which are support the development of a responsible visitor serving component to the city's economy. And what's 3.4.7 is that's not right. Encourage alternate modes of travel or reduce the number or length of vehicle trips generated by visitors. Yeah, it is support the development of a responsible visitor serving component to the city's economy. So the restrooms are, a visitor serving component so that people don't have a place to go to the restroom in town. They can stick around longer. Can go the next slide. Oh, I actually did print them in there. So when we feel if you go back 3.4.7, they said the connection there is that by providing restrooms downtown, people don't have to drive somewhere else. They can stay in town longer. They don't have to drive around, and they can walk around town. There you go. So then I've got a number of tables with the project lists, each project listed, and the guiding policy and the general plan listed there. That's also in the staff report. I don't think I'll read them unless you feel like it's necessary. But you can see the projects. We have miscellaneous repairs, downtown restrooms, the Great Center Main Street traffic signal, which has been talked about for a long time, access ramp upgrades, which is an ADA compliance issue, and curb and sidewalk gutter repair, curb gutter and sidewalk repair, which is just maintaining infrastructure. You can go to the next one. Pope Street Bike Lane project, which has been talked about for a while and has been awarded for a construction contract. Pavement rehabilitation projects, curb ramp upgrades, a new sidewalk, which that project's actually, Mitchell Street sidewalk actually complete.
I was going to say, I thought that one was.
It is complete. I include a little budget for next year for closeout costs. It's a small amount, but I just want to be consistent and keep it in there. Some sewer projects.
Very excited about R78.
What was that one?
The overlay on Charter Oak.
That's right, yes.
My car shocks, thank you.
It's been talked about for a long time. We're hopeful we can get moving forward with that very quickly. Again, these are wastewater projects. They're miscellaneous maintenance projects. The most important one there are really S52 and 53, which are, the first one is, S52 is complying with the cease and desist order and the new regional board permit to do some upgrades at the plant. And then 53 is improving the irrigation system at the spray fields. Some levee repairs, a new drinking water well to serve the office building, sludge removal, routine items. Charter Avenue sewer repair, which is complete. Again, it's included now because there's some closeout costs that have yet to be paid. So it's in this year's 16-17 budget. And then getting a temporary office building out at the wastewater plant to get them out of the old building. And then water projects. Elbridge Creek Ecosystem Restoration Project, Dwyer Road Booster Station, which will improve pressures in the southern part of the distribution area. Finishing up the Bell Canyon valve replacement and repair project. Holmes Tank upgrade project to improve water supply pumping capacity up to the Holmes Tank. Bell Canyon Creek inflow, so we can measure inflow. This is I'm kind of getting a little detail, but this is actually a requirement from the state that we improve the quality of our inflow measuring devices at the reservoir, so we can better quantify how much water is actually coming into the reservoir. And then tank 2 needs to be rehabilitated. That's a cleaning recoat. Go. Well, filter rehab, that actually is complete. Again, we just have some closeout costs, so we've included a little bit of money this fiscal year, so it stays in the CIP. Lower York Reservoir Dam rehab, and the last one is a new project that we added this year. As a result of that mid-valve replacement repair project out there, we did do some evaluation of the tower. We saw some video, and it's quite disturbing, the condition of the tower, so we have accelerated the replacement of that tower in the CIP. It's an old corrugated metal tower, and it's like 50 years old, so it's starting to fall apart. What else we got?
Next steps.
Is that it? Next steps is City Council adoption on July 12, 2016. I did want to just talk quickly about how we get to the project list. Like I said, as I mentioned earlier, it is really based on what was done last year, just updating it for current conditions. I do have to take in consideration funding availability as well. Again, I really pay attention to this year. I start to look out prior years. If you look at the numbers, and it gets kind of scary because after 2 years and a lot of the funds run out of money, and we have to start either we have to actually find more revenue or start delaying projects. And I only point that out just to give you a kind of insight into the prioritization process. And then if folks want to comment on the priorities and what they think is important, they're welcome to come to the city council meeting next week and give their input on it. that's the appropriate venue for that kind of discussion. If anyone wants to come and talk and let the council know what they think is important and where the council should be spending their money. So that's it. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
All right, perfect. Just to clarify, this is just that this is in conformity with the 1993 general plan. All right.
And the 3.4.2 and the 3.4.7 are taken from that.
Yes.
Okay, I'm just curious, the 3.4.2 is the response to the restroom. What is the encourage alternate modes of travel and reduce the number of length of vehicles? Is that for the bike lanes?
That was also for the restrooms, and the thought process there is that if people can park once and just walk around downtown, that reduces vehicle trips.
The restroom isn't driving the point. What he's saying is if you're looking for general plan support of this project, these are two
Right.
existing
Well, the
goals.
first one made total sense with respect to the restroom, but, I was
Goals
just,
can support different projects.
right, but he also said that actually the second one was.
That was the idea. If the commission thinks it's a stretch, it's a stretch. But
No,
I mean,
I'm just curious. The other thing too is, do you think that overlay is going to be enough for Charter Oak?
not for Charter Oak.
Be enough for Charter
Enough.
Oak?
Yes, I do.
You do? Okay.
Mhm.
I was just curious because I know there had been discussion that if it gets past a certain point, the overlay doesn't work. You have to dig up the whole thing and make it over. And I didn't know if that was.
No, I don't think that's the case for there. I'm not had experts look at it, and they support that decision. It's what you see out there. I know it's really rough to ride on, and there's lots of raveling and stuff falling off, but that's just the wearing course. So structurally, it's really sound. It's just the wearing course, and we'll go in areas where they identify structural issues. We'll go in and do some small repairs. They're actually doing that today. Yeah, on the slurry seal project, where there's areas we notice there's significant problems. We've gone out with the grinder, and they grind out that whole section of asphalt, and then recompact the base material, and then put new asphalt back in. So
Where was that
it'll be the
today?
same. Like on where are they at today? I think they're on North Crane and Elmhurst, Hillview. With our slurry seal project that started this week, that's the first step, is to go in and do those base repairs. And so it'd be the same kind of mode of operations for the overlay project. We'd figure out some places that maybe there's structural issues or could be structural issues, and we'd remove the AC.
Could you talk about the overall schedule for that project, just given that it came up?
Which one?
The slurry
The
seal.
slurry seal. So this week we're doing base repairs. Next week will be crack sealing. That's where they just go in and fill in the small cracks in the pavement that are there. With an emulsion, and then the following week they will start with the full road closures and actual slurry sealing. So those streets will be impacted; they will be closed if people are on those streets. I will be sending out an email notice later this week with a more definitive schedule for those closures. People that are affected, there will be no parking signs going up 72 hours in advance. And then if you're on one of the streets that are directly affected, you also get a door hanger from the contractor to let you know. So people, and if you're not getting them, don't worry about it. At 72 hours in advance, you'll get a notice. There'll be an email blast so you can check. But
How long is the
yeah.
street supposed to do?
It's usually most of the day.
Only one day.
It's only one day.
Oh.
Yeah, it's most of the day, but it's only one day.
Close enough.
And it's important to stay off them because if anyone goes on them too early, it will affect the end product. And I've seen, especially if people turn in and out of their driveways, it'll actually push the coating off, and then we end up with a failure and a problem, and city's got to pay the contractor to redo that work. So
Okay. So these aren't our guys. This is contracted out.
contracted out, yeah. We have our guys inspecting.
Okay. Thanks for all this.
Yeah, this is a
work.
great
That's
report.
You're welcome.
Are there any other comments?
I think it is important to note that a lot of these projects still remain unfunded, so revenue is an issue, and our citizens need to be aware of that.
Thank you. I think that was a real good job, Steve.
Thank you.
So we just need to have a motion to adopt? All right, if we can have a motion to adopt.
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Monette,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kistner,
Yes.
Commissioner Koberstein,
Yes.
Commissioner Sweeney,
Yes.
Chairperson Parker.
Yes. Moving on to 7.1, it's the Planning Commission vote for a new chair and vice chair. Do we want to do chair first and then vice chair?
Yeah, so staff is requesting just two separate motions, obviously, for the two separate positions. Requires a nomination, a second, and then a vote. And obviously, it may be appropriate to do the chair first.
Okay. All right, do we have a motion for the chair?
I nominate Grace Kistner for chair.
I will second that.
You beat me to it.
If we could have roll call.
Commissioner Monette,
Yes.
Chairperson Parker,
For the last time, yes. For now.
Commissioner Koberstein,
Yes.
Commissioner Sweeney,
Yes.
All right. We,
Commissioner Kistner.
all right, and then do we have a motion for vice chair?
I nominate Mary Koberstein for vice chair.
Second.
Roll call.
Commissioner Monette,
Yes.
Commissioner Kistner,
Yes.
Commissioner Sweeney,
Yes.
Chairperson Parker,
I think it's Commissioner
or
Parker,
Commissioner
yes.
Parker. And
Oh, I
Commissioner
think I have to
Koberstein?
abstain too. I'll follow Grace's lead.
All right, Grace, you get to do department reports for activities.
No discussion, all right. Yeah, so moving on to the department report. Not a lot to report today. I unfortunately have not been able to get to updating the agenda forecast, which I apologize for. We have had numerous applications since the last time it was updated, and it will be updated for the next agenda. The department continues to make the general plan our number one priority. However, there are numerous development applications that are in. The CIA has filed their application, so that is in our town, St. Helena, which many of you were at the kind of groundbreaking ceremony. Their application is in for review. So there's numerous applications that are pending, under review, and we'll be moving forward through the review process and coming to you in the future months. Again, as I mentioned, the general plan is the department's number one priority as of today. And along those lines, I apologize for being absent for the last meeting. However, it's my understanding that the commission directed the department to bring back the general plan EIR for another public hearing on comments. That will occur at the next planning commission meeting, so that is July 19th. And then the comment period for all those listening at home and for you to remind folks closes on July 25th. So that is the last day that we will accept comments in the department on the EIR, formal comments.
I think we should put that out on the city news.
Okay, it was included in the original blast, but I will.
Maybe it's a separate own
Yeah, on it. all
email
on it.
blast.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And then it's worth noting that the city council has canceled their second meeting in July. So we will be meeting the council will be meeting on the 12th. However, they've canceled the second meeting. That's just for the public and the commission.
And he's not going to say this, but he's the acting city manager, so we can all start beating on him anyway.
Can I ask what happened to the new house on Allen Avenue? I was under the impression at our last meeting
I was going to come back.
that they were going to come back tonight, and in fact, I received, I assume everybody else did, some revised plans. Were they just not ready, or?
That's correct. They did not resubmit in time to come back to the next meeting. They are unprocessed right now. It's been referred out for just another review to make sure that the changes didn't trigger any need for new conditions. I can't commit to it being on the next agenda, but we do have it in-house.
Okay.
All right, perfect with that. Thank you so much. Meeting is adjourned. I actually almost brought my other one, and then I forgot it when I was going to go pick up Grace, and I was like, shoot, should have brought it. So I'm going to take this one home.